Chapter 5 of the Counterpane Fairy. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. The Counterpane Fairy by Catherine Pyle. Chapter 5. At the Edge of the Polar Sea. "The crocuses are up on the lawn," said Teddy's mother, who was standing at the window and looking out, "and just hear that blackbird. I always feel as though spring were really here when I hear the blackbirds sing." Teddy was still in bed. It seemed to him sometimes that he had spent his whole life lying there in the India room under the silk counterpane, and that it was some other Teddy who used to go to school and shout and play with the boys in the street. "I wish I could go out of doors the way I used to," he said. "So do I," said mamma, "but never mind, darling. The doctor says it won't be so very long now before you can be out again, and this afternoon we'll play some nice game or other that you can play in bed. Now, what would you like it to be?" But before Teddy could answer, she added, "Oh dear, there comes Aunt Mariah." Aunt Mariah lived down at the other end of the village, and she generally came every fortnight to spend an afternoon with Teddy's mother. She always brought her knitting in a bag, and a white net cap that she put on before the glass as soon as she had taken her bonnet off. Teddy liked to have her come. Her needles flew so fast, and she used to recite to him. A was an archer and shot at a frog. B was a butcher and had a great dog. Then when he was tired of sitting with her and mamma, he could run out of doors and play. But he found it was different today from what it had been before. He was still weak from his illness, and after she had told him all the verses that she knew, he grew weary of hearing her talk of Cousin George's wife and Mrs. Appleby's rheumatism. His mother saw that he was growing restless, and that his cheeks were flushed, so she asked Aunt Mariah to come over to her room to look at some calico she had been buying. When they had gone, Teddy lay for a time enjoying the silence of the room, but after a while it began to seem too still, and the clock ticked with a strange, loud sound. He wished Aunt Mariah would go away and let mamma come back again. It was so lonely, and he was tired of his books. He was lying on his back, and presently he drew up his knees, and then over the tops of them he could only see the upper half of the window and the tips of the pine trees against the still blue sky outside. "Oh dear, dear, dear," said the Counterpane Fairy's voice just behind the hill. "Steeper than ever today. Will I ever get to the top?" A minute after he saw her little figure standing on the hill, dark against the sky, and the staff in her hand like a thin black line. "Oh, dear Counterpane Fairy!" cried Teddy. "Have you come to show me another story?" "Are you sure you want to see one?" asked the Counterpane Fairy. "Oh, yes, yes, I do," cried Teddy. "Your stories don't make me feel tired the way Aunt Mariah's do." The fairy shook her head. "I thought her stories were very pleasant," she said. "So they are," said Teddy, "but I like her stories best when I'm all well, and I like your stories best when I'm sick. Besides, I only hear her stories and I see yours." The fairy smiled. "Well then, which square will you choose this time?" she said. "I think I would like that one," said Teddy, pointing to a square of watered ribbon that shaded from white to a sea green. "That's rather a long story," said the fairy doubtfully. "Oh, please show it," begged Teddy. "Well," said the fairy, "fix your eyes on it while I count." Then she began, and he heard her voice going on and on. 49, she cried. Teddy was floating on a block of ice across the wide green polar sea. The Counterpane Fairy was with him, and all around were great fields of ice and floating white bergs. The air was very still and cold, but Teddy liked it all the better for that, for now he was an ice fairy. He was dressed from head to foot in a suit that shone and sparkled like woven frost, and in his belt was a knife as shining as an icicle. Something kept bobbing and tickling his forehead, and when he caught hold of it, he found it was the end of the long cap he wore. As they drifted along, sometimes they saw a walrus with long tusks lying on the ice, or a soft-eyed seal. Once some strange little beings that looked like dwarfs, with goggle eyes and straggling black hair, caught hold of the block of ice, and lifting themselves out of the water, made faces at Teddy. But the moment they saw the Counterpane Fairy, their look changed to one of fear, and with a queer gurgling cry they dropped from the ice and were gone. "What were those things?" asked Teddy. "They were ice mermen," said the Counterpane Fairy. "Naughty, mischievous things they are. I'd like to pack them all off to the North Pole if I could." "Oh, look, look!" cried Teddy. "Just look at those little bears playing over there." They had drifted in quite near to the shore, and in among the blocks of ice 3 white bear cubs were playing together like fat little boys. They were climbing to the top of an ice hillock and then sliding down again. As soon as they saw Teddy and the Counterpane Fairy, they began to call, "Oh, Father Bear! Father Bear! Just come look at these funny things floating into shore on a block of ice." In a moment from behind the ice hill came a great white Father Bear, galloping up as fast as he could to see what the matter was. He came over toward Teddy, growling. "Grrr! Grrr! Who are you coming and frightening my little bears this way?" But as soon as he saw the Counterpane Fairy he grew quite humble. "Oh, excuse me," he said. "I didn't know it was a friend of yours." "Yes, it is," said the fairy, "and I have brought him here to stay a while. Will you take good care of him?" "Yes, I will," said Father Bear. "He shall sleep in the cave with us and have part of our meat if he will, and I'll be as careful of him as though he were one of my own cubs." "Very well," said the fairy. "Mind you do." Then turning to Teddy she bade him step on shore. "But aren't you coming too?" asked Teddy. "No," said the Counterpane Fairy. "I can't come, but Father Bear will take good care of you." So Teddy stepped on to the shore, and the fairy pushed the block of ice out into the water, and waving her hand to him she drifted away across the open sea. The Father Bear stood watching her until she was out of sight, and then he turned to Teddy. "Now, you fairy," he said, "you may climb up onto my back, and I'll carry you to my wife. She'll take good care of you for as long as the Counterpane Fairy chooses to leave you here." The 3 little bear cubs had disappeared, but as soon as the Father Bear carried Teddy around the hill of ice, he saw what had become of them. They were sitting with the Mother Bear at the door of a cave. One of them was sucking its paws, and the other 2 were talking as fast as they could. The Mother Bear looked worried and anxious. "What's all this Dumpy and Sprawley are telling me?" she said. "And what's that you have on your back?" "It's an ice fairy," growled old Father Bear, "and the Counterpane Fairy wants us to take care of it for a while. You don't mind, my dear, do you?" "Oh, dear, dear," said the Mother Bear. "I suppose not. But what shall we give it to eat, and how shall we keep it?" "Oh, it'll do just as the other cubs do, I suppose," said the Father Bear. Then turning to Teddy he said, "You eat meat, don't you?" "Yes, sir," answered Teddy timidly. "Then that's all right," said the Father Bear. "Here, you children, take this fairy off and let him play with you." 2 of the little bears, Fatty, who was the one who had been sucking his paws, and Dumpy, were delighted to have a new playmate, and they told him he might come over and slide down their hill. But the 3rd one, Sprawley, scowled and grumbled. "Another one to be eating up our meat," he said, "just as if there weren't enough of us without." Still he went over with them to the ice hill, and they all began sliding down. After a while Sprawley said, "I know a great deal nicer hill than this one. It's just a little further on. Come on and I'll show it to you." "Oh," said Fatty, "but suppose we should see some ice mermen?" "Pooh!" said Sprawley. "I ain't afraid. It's a great deal nicer than this. Come on." So the 3 little bears and Teddy trotted on to another hill, and it really was much longer and steeper than the other. It went down almost to the edge of the sea. They had slidden down it only a few times when Dumpy cried out, "Oh, look! Look! There are some ice mermen, and they are making faces at me." There they were, sure enough, looking over the edge of the ice. Ugly little gray things with mouths like fishes, and they were making faces, and presently they began to sing. Bear cubs, look at their toes, look at their ears and their hair and their nose. The great big walrus will